Okay, right. So, good morning again, everyone. Good to see so many of you back today, and also for the those of you that have joined us since the induction day. Just a reminder for those watching live and those watching back. I have almost all of your course registration forms in. That is the one-page form that you had to fill in, and I fill in the details at the bottom of it. So everybody who has submitted as of Wednesday morning will have had their form sent along to CIOB, and as I was saying, you should receive an email not from me but from a CIOB email address giving you a username, which will be your initial and your surname, and a temporary password, which they will suggest that you change to something that you can remember. That will give you access to the website called Moodle, which is where all of the course materials, including the project scenario, any assignment questions that I set, my PowerPoint presentations, any handouts that I want to use, and the video for the course. I expect that you should receive that today. Any of you that have not sent that form in, please do so as quickly as you can, because you won't get access to all of the materials if you don't. Also, anybody that missed the induction session that we did last week, it is available on YouTube. So you just go to go on YouTube, search Training LMS, and there's only 4 videos up there, one of which is the induction for this particular program. So we had the induction last Wednesday. Today we get sort of stuck into some of the course materials proper. We regularly start with health and safety. I hesitate to say because it's the easiest unit, but for a lot of people it is probably the most likely that is not new to them. No matter what your role in construction is, you will have no doubt been exposed to some form of health and safety training, and certainly, you know, in this day and age, you can't work in construction without a good awareness and understanding of the health and safety implications. Whether you're you know, on-site based or off-site based, we all have a health and safety responsibility. The health and safety unit is actually health, safety, and the environment. The bias is very much towards the health and safety side of things. You know, there'll be half a dozen health and safety sessions and a couple of environmental sessions. However, when it comes to it in June, when you have a choice of questions, you basically will either pick a health and safety question or an environmental question. So for those of you that have maybe done anything from NEBOSH to site safety supervisors to the SMSTS course to an IOS training course, or even just general health and safety awareness, we won't really try to replicate your traditional health and safety training course for these sessions. We try to make it specific to 2 things. One, the project. Okay, so if you recall from the induction, there is a fictional project which we have to imagine that we are involved in the management of, and any of your health and safety coursework will relate to that project. So if you're asked to produce a risk assessment or a method statement or anything like that, it will be in relation to what we will call the wedding venue project. It's the old house that has been converted into a country club and wedding venue. So we will very much focus on safety risks relating to that project. Also, we will be looking at health and safety from a managerial perspective. Okay, so we're not going to get into in this section about you know, what different signs mean, or you know, stuff that you might do on a traditional course. This is more about understanding your managerial responsibilities, because health and safety starts from the top. Health and safety is a management responsibility. I remember as recently, when did I start in consultancy? Around about 2004, I started in a large consultancy company, and there was over 100 of us in the office, and there was 2 of us whose responsibilities included health and safety. And I remember even at that time, if a letter or an email came into the office mentioning health and safety, it automatically got diverted to us. And it was kind of, Roger will deal with that. We're not in that era anymore. Health and safety is not something that can be delegated to other people. It is a responsibility for all of us. Yes, you may have specialists and people that can fulfill certain functions, but no matter what we do, design, supervise, build, we all have an input that we can contribute to health and safety. So in terms of the syllabus, this is directly from the CIOB's learning objectives for this particular unit. And I have underlined effectively some of the bits that will interpret into sessions. Okay, so I said that this is a managerial look at health and safety. So one of the things that we need to understand is what is the legal framework. Now, we don't need to get bogged down into, every single piece of health and safety legislation, but you can't argue with the law. So we do need to understand there's lots of things that you will know that you have to do or need to do as part of your responsibilities, but we also need to understand why is that? What is the driving force behind that? And in a lot of cases, it is legislation. And when we are in situations where we need to be a bit more formal, perhaps an incident has occurred or that you're having to take action against somebody, nothing beats quoting legislation. People can't argue with that. Some people hide behind the phrase health and safety. People will tell you, you can do that, you can't do that because of health and safety. One of my favorite pastimes is challenging people and saying, why not? Show us the piece of legislation that says I'm allowed to do that or I'm not allowed to do that. So again, as a management function, you need to be able not to necessarily carry all of them on the tip of your tongue, but you need to be able to go and find where the relevant legislation is so that you can quote it when required. A very popular assignment question is always based around risk. Okay, so we will spend a session on risk. So risk registers, risk assessments, method statements. Those are the three most important documents. And I guess that potentially is the most important session that we'll do. And we'll probably do that next Wednesday. That will be our session on risk. So don't hold me to it, but about 50% of the times we have a question, an assessment question at the end of the course, something to do with risk. And it can be quite a useful one because it's not usually a lengthy 2,000-word report. It's usually produce a document like a risk assessment or a method statement or whatever. So for those of you that are familiar, that have done that sort of thing in the past or would be comfortable with doing that, that is quite a straightforward assignment for you to tackle. Sustainability, we'll do a little bit of that in the environmental sessions, but also my colleague Paul will come back to that in the construction technology. And obviously these days you'll all know that there's much more of a drive to make sure all of our projects are much more sustainable. So we'll give you some real life examples of that. And indeed, my colleague Walter will talk to you about waste and pollution and things like that in the environmental sessions as well. So he'll give you a bit more detail on that. Also in health and safety, we'll look a little bit about management systems. So some of you may be familiar with various management systems. OSAS 18001, which has changed to ISO 25000, I think it is. Safety Cert is another one. So just understanding how health and safety management systems can help your business. We won't touch too much on the legal side of things because actually we'll cover that in the contract and commercial practice section. So that's more covered at that point. So that's the sort of things we'll be doing. Roughly, those are the sessions in front of us under health, safety, and the environmental. Today is a bit of an introduction to health and safety, a bit of a health and safety overview. We'll have a session on accident reporting investigations. We may be able to wrap up traffic management in that one as well, because when you see this year's project, traffic management isn't really that applicable. Some years we have fictional projects that are in city centres and things like that, and we maybe need to think more about doing traffic management plans and stuff, but this year that's not as relevant. We'll have an external speaker on asbestos awareness. We'll have Walter in for his 2 sessions on environmental. We'll have the session on risk next week, and we'll do a session on the CDM regulations as well. So that is your sort of run into Christmas. Also before Christmas, you'll be delighted to know I'll be setting you your first practice assignment to do. But before I do that, I will have a session on assignment writing. So as I have mentioned in the induction, I understand for some of you, it may be a long time since you produced a piece of coursework. A lot of you will have good knowledge and good understanding already, but it's a different challenge to actually put it down on paper. So we will have a dedicated session just to give you a little bit of a kickstart, a little bit of advice, and just to have the benefit of telling you here at the start of your CMP journey. Yesterday I spent the day doing one-to-ones with candidates who get their assignment questions tomorrow. Okay, so they started about 6-7 months ago, just like you are now, and the clock has ticked round, and tomorrow they'll find out their real questions. And a number of them were commenting to me that they were so glad that they did the practice coursework, because quite possibly your first one is not going to be great, okay, but you learn every one that you do. Okay, so the practice coursework doesn't count for anything, but it's a good discipline for you to do to get some feedback from myself and the other tutors. So I'll have a session on that in December, and then I'll set you your first practice assignment to do probably over the Christmas period. So health and safety then. Health and safety has a particular reputation in some views. Unfairly so in some cases. I have done health and safety consultancy for a number of years. When I was a fairly green recruit into a construction company in my 20s, I went off on a 5-day health and safety training course, from which I came back and the managing director said, "That's great, Roger, you can look after health and safety now." And it was kind of that attitude, like, great, we've got somebody that we can dump all of that on, somebody that can look after health and safety. Attitudes have changed. Views have changed on health and safety. Yes, there are still some people out there that we may categorize as jobs worth and who make our lives difficult when it comes to health and safety. But I think everybody these days gets the whole point behind it. Good health and safety normally also means good quality. The disciplines that you have for doing health and safety right carry over into doing quality right. You think about the concept of health and safety. The most important thing that you can do is, before you do something, stop, think, plan how you're going to do it, okay? That carries equally well with quality. Stop and make sure you're going to do things in the right way. So take a positive attitude to health and safety. The reality when it comes to health and safety is that, yes, there are laws out there, and people can be very quick to point out, nuisance laws and things that don't seem to make sense. But the majority of health and safety laws are out there setting us boundaries within which organizations and individuals have to operate, on the basis that if we do that, we should have a safe working environment. And the bottom line is, it's all about asking you to be responsible for reasonably foreseeable risks. So, if you want to distill all this down, forget about the small print for a minute. If you're working on a job and there's groundworks, there's excavations, well, that's your priority. You're thinking, well, what could happen here? I could hit cables, I could hit services, the trenches could collapse, people could fall into the trenches. We've got machinery operating. It's dangerous to be a pedestrian or somebody operating in the vicinity of a piece of machinery. Those are reasonably foreseeable risks. We don't have to think about all sorts of random 1 in a million chances. We're thinking about the main things. If we're putting a roof on, okay, we're working at height, somebody might fall off the roof, somebody might drop something on top of people below. Those are the main things that you have to be concerned with. So it's about taking responsibility for reasonably foreseeable risks. You do not want to be in a situation where something has gone wrong and you look back and go, yeah, I suppose I should have seen that. So it's about giving yourself the time to stop and think about things before you actually do them. Now, here we have a photograph that I took a few years ago. This is outside a hospital. A lot of construction work going on. What you can see there is a not uncommon sight. There's a few things there I'm not happy with, including, their separation from the traffic. That was the main entrance in and out of this major hospital. But the other point I want to flag up about this particular photograph is you can see there the dust. Okay, so we have health and safety. Some of you in your teams and things like that, you might say health, safety and welfare, or health, safety and well-being. It's grown over the years. Actually, at the start, we used to talk about safety. So we used to, largely be concerned with stop somebody falling off a roof or stop somebody being electrocuted. We've got better at that. So then we did emphasize a little bit more the health side of things. And that's the first thing I want to say here. There is a much bigger emphasis these days on people's long-term health. We haven't got it completely nailed yet in terms of stopping serious accidents taking place, but we have a lot better record than we used to. But what that has brought into focus is we are still causing unnecessary and significant long-term damage to people's health by the things that we do. Okay, so even things like inhaling silica dust. Okay, people are cutting concrete curbs, flags, people are chasing walls, people are doing demolitions. If you inhale that silica dust that lies in the bottom of your lungs, it can give you a nasty illness, silicosis in later life. There are lots of things, even simple things like hearing loss, like arthritis, like long-term skin problems, dermatitis. These are all things that they maybe don't happen instantly, but we build up health issues over the years. So there is a bigger focus on this now. We're also perhaps breaking down the sort of macho image of the construction worker that, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm tough enough for that, I can take that. Well, the reality is when you look at the statistics, we can't. We're doing untold damage to people over the course of their career. So health is something you should consider when you're going through the next few sessions as well. And also something that's increasingly coming in now, and I'll mention it later on in this particular module, people's welfare and people's mental health. Okay, so I'm involved with the CIOB Benevolent Fund, which is the charitable arm of CIOB, and we get cases in all the time, and we get people with stress issues, anxiety issues, mental health issues. You will see a lot of free materials available. Just something for you to think of. I have had instances recently. I had a site manager in Edinburgh last year on this program, and he had been put on the program as part of his development plan to take on more responsibility. And he said within the first month of taking on the role of site manager, he had 2 people into him, more or less crying on his shoulder about issues, money issues and personal life issues and things like that. He said, I didn't know how to deal with that. I wasn't equipped with that. No level of training could have helped me deal with that. I had somebody else who was in the unfortunate position of having to make people redundant. And one of the people that was under consideration for redundancy came in one day and said that he was having suicidal thoughts. And suddenly this guy's going, well, how do I treat that redundancy process now? These are real life issues that people have to deal with. So there is a lot of help available. If you look at the CIOB events, there's lots of talks and also resource materials for people to do toolbox talks. The CIOB charity has free helplines that people can call and so on. So there is a lot of stuff out there. So what I'm really saying is the world of health and safety has broadened. There's the safety side of things, there's the health side of things, there's the welfare side of things, and there's the mental health side of things. And make sure you consider all of those whenever you're managing health and safety. I said that all the facts and figures will back some of these longer term issues up. Moving slightly towards the assignment side of things now, you want to back up anything that you say with as much source information as you can. Where did you find that? What's backing up your assertion? So, anybody can say something bland like construction sites are dangerous places. Okay, not going to disagree with you on that. But if you say to me, last year there were X number of accidents on a construction site, that's a fact. You've had to go and find that somewhere. And that's what the examiners like, the people that will be marking your assignments like. They like things backed up with facts. So a very good source of that is the Health and Safety Executive website. Now, whether you're in GB and it's the HSE, or if you're in Northern Ireland, it's the HSE-NI website. They have very similar figures in there. They have lots of these sort of infographics that will tell you, and there's some pretty startling facts and figures there. I mean, look at that, 1.4 million work-related ill health cases. I said to you, the long-term health how major an issue that is a minute. Well, it's backed up by the figures. 0.6 of a million people suffering from work-related stress, depression, or anxiety, and I would say that is massively underreported as well. You'll see me mention this morning about the financial side of things. 9.8 billion annual costs of new cases of work-related ill health. That's not even accidents, that's just ill health, and it doesn't include long-term things such as occupational cancer. So poor management of health and safety is a huge cost. You see at the bottom, you add them all up, estimated around 15 billion a year goes down the drain effectively because we don't manage health and safety properly. You'll see other facts and figures in there, including fatalities and so on, and you can break those down by sector, by industry, by type of accident, so on. So these are the types of facts and figures, whether you quote them or whether you even screenshot some of them and put them in your coursework. These are the types of things that show an examiner, this person spent a little bit of time researching, this person spent a little bit of time understanding the facts behind the topic. Okay, so I mentioned ill health. You can see there's that dives down further into the statistics. Look, there's another one there, 23.5 million days lost due to work-related ill health. What happens in your business every time somebody's off for a day? How does that disrupt you? Never mind the personal suffering and inconvenience to the person involved. How does that actually impact on your business? And it'll be negative. Things don't get done. Other people are pulled in from other areas. Clients get let down. So even on a productivity perspective, that is an awful lot of people not in their workplace doing the jobs that they're there to do. So you can delve down into those. There's other figures there, as you can see, about the stress and anxiety and so on. And as I say, I suspect that as of yet, that is still something that's drastically underreported. And it can also be broken down by industry. And you can see there about a quarter of the way down, you see construction and construction, certainly in terms of workplace injury, is probably number 2, as in the second worst by head of population, second only to agriculture. Okay, so that is something that has been improving. But unfortunately, construction is still perceived, and the facts back it up, as one of the most hazardous industries to work in. In terms of where those fatalities and injuries come from in construction, and this is a useful one to carry forward in your thought process too. I mean, it obviously fluctuates a little bit from year to year, but the number one cause of fatalities in the construction industry is consistently falling from height. So if you have a project that has any form of working at height, that has got to be a priority in terms of what management you're putting in place to try and mitigate the risks. And don't just think of working at height as 10-story buildings. I took a training course for a local authority a few years ago, and somebody came in every morning at 10:30 with tea and scones, very nice. And the lady that wheeled it in every day came over to me one of the sessions and say, "I'm really pleased to see this training taking place." And I thought, that's a nice comment, but slightly unusual source coming from. Then she went on to tell me, she said, "I lost my son 10 years ago at the age of 21. He was working on a construction site. He fell and suffered a head injury and died. He fell 8 feet. Okay, so we tend to think of working at height as, the big stuff. When we have the big stuff, we tend to do it right. We say, right, we can't take any chances of that. It's I'll just get up to change the time on that clock. I'll just get something from my roof space. Those are the things that we tend to take more of a chance on. So be just as wary of the low height working at height as people working on roofs and people working on multi-story buildings, because the facts show, again, it's the biggest killer. You'll see other ones, and some of them we'll talk about, like traffic is an issue there. People have been struck by vehicles, people have been struck by objects, particularly falling objects and so on. People trapped, well, usually that's things like excavation collapses and stuff like that, or demolition. So you can see where the fatalities come from. So those have got to be your number one priorities whenever you're managing health and safety. So falls from height, consistently, you look into the HSE figures, it's usually around 50% of fatalities are caused by falls from height. In terms of non-fatal injuries, so the slips, trips, and falls that causing sprains and fractures and things like that, that's the next thing we should be concerned about, just in generally trying to prevent the volume of accidents that we have. Also, manual handling, people lifting and carrying things is also a major issue. So those are all things that we need to take into account whenever it comes to our risk assessments. Now, from your own perspective, I just want you to think for a moment, and not something that I want you to hand in to me or anything, but just have a think yourself. What are some of the things that you have to do to comply with health and safety? You all have different job roles. So the things that you have to do will depend on the company you work for, the role that you occupy, and so on. But we all have health and safety responsibilities. Let's take a few basic things. If I started with a company, when I go to visit site, I'd have to wear PPE. I'd probably get an induction on the site, and at that induction I'd be told things like where the first aid equipment was, who the first aider was, what the emergency evacuation procedures were. If I was going to do any work on the site, I'd be shown a risk assessment. Now, all of those things, you can understand why they do them. It makes perfect common sense to do them. However, all of those things are also backed up by legislation. Okay, so you mightn't necessarily know the legislation or have it at the tip of your tongue, but it is all there. So, for example, wearing PPE, there is the Personal Protective Equipment at Work regulations. There is a whole set of regulations that govern that. The fact that you have inductions is covered in the CDM regulations. The fact that you have first aiders, there's the First Aid at Work regulations. So almost everything you do is backed up by a piece of law. It's not necessary that we carry that around like some sort of encyclopedia. I compare health and safety legislation very much to motoring. We all, most of us anyway, learn to drive. We do our theory, do the highway code, you have your test and so on. Could you quote every single motoring law? I doubt it. Could you, many years after your test, quote everything that's in the highway code? I doubt it. But we all know the main things. We know speed limits that we're meant to maintain. We know what different signs mean and so on. We don't necessarily need to be able to quote the legislation behind that. So health and safety is the same. The most important thing is that you know your main responsibilities. You don't need to be like an encyclopedia being able to quote those things, but you do need to know where to find them should you have to. So that's because we have all of those things backed up by some sort of health and safety legislation. If you want one takeaway point from this morning, one personal piece of advice from me, look at the statement in bold here. Now, this is not my statement. This is a statement from the Health and Safety Executive, the enforcers, the people that are responsible for making sure that health and safety is adhered to in the workplace. The law requires you to look at what the risks are and take sensible measures to tackle them. Sometimes we get caught up in form filling, box ticking, and so on. And that leads us into a false sense of security. Have you got a permit for that? Yes. Did you do a risk assessment for that? Yes. Have you got the right documentation for that? Yes. It's just the same as quality. When you hear me talk about quality later on in the course, we can get lulled into false sense of security, say, yes, somebody checked that. We have a form that said that that was checked. Yeah, you have a piece of paper. It doesn't mean the thing was actually done right. It's the same with health and safety. Don't become over-reliant on the systems and the processes. Take a look at anything you're involved in and ask yourself that question. What are the risks? And am I taking sensible measures to tackle them? If you're ever in the unfortunate position to have to be interviewed by a health and safety inspector or stand up in a court, that is the only thing that you can fall back on to rely on as your defense. Did you look at what the risks are and take sensible measures to tackle them? Now, obviously, we do have the law, and it comes from different sources. We're all waiting to find out, what's going to happen in the post-Brexit era. In the past, a lot of our health and safety legislation did originally derived from Europe. We can implement it in different ways, but in theory, all European countries should have similar systems in place. And those of you who maybe, for example, work between the UK or Ireland, you will see great similarities. We might call things slightly different documents, but you have to do a document before you start something. A risk assessment. You have to notify the health and safety authorities before a job starts. Different jurisdictions might call the form a slightly different thing, but you would recognize health and safety no matter what country that you go to. And certainly there's no indication that there's going to be wholesale changes to health and safety in 2021. I think it's pretty much going to be as you are. So that's where a lot of it originally came from, but obviously then it is enacted within the UK Parliament, and there are small deviations between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, but they are, I have to say, very, very minor. Predominantly health and safety law is the same throughout the UK. There are numerous pieces of health and safety legislation. We don't need to go into them all, but there's probably 4 or 5 that I'd be surprised if you don't have the opportunity to refer to or quote in some shape or form when it comes to your coursework. Obviously, the underpinning piece of legislation in the UK is the Health and Safety at Work Act. In Northern Ireland, it's called something slightly different. It's called an order, and it came in 1978, but it is basically the same document. It is a very general piece of legislation that sets out general duties of employers, of employees, and so on. And it is also the piece of legislation that introduces the phrase, so far as is reasonably practical. Some of you no doubt will have heard that phrase before, but what that means is that in a lot of situations, it's okay to weigh everything up. Everything's a balance. Goodness, we're having quite a debate about it at the minute, with COVID and the restrictions and trying to, different people I know have different views about lockdowns and things like that and what's appropriate. Every action has a reaction, and it's the same in health and safety. So it's about finding a balance when it comes to health and safety. It's, at the end of the day, we all have to keep people safe, but we all have commercial businesses to run as well. So it's finding the right balance when it comes to health and safety. And the most important thing I'd say to you, and I may repeat this when we talk about risk, the most important thing that you can do is make sure that you stop and think about any activity before you do it. If I had an activity and I gave it to 10 different health and safety experts to risk assess, they'd probably come up with 10 different answers, okay? So health and safety to some extent is about people's perception of risk, and everybody will have a slightly different perception. But the most important thing anybody can do as an individual is, before you do something, have a think about it, and if it's appropriate, record that thinking, and that is in your risk assessment. If something goes wrong, one of the first questions you will be asked by your insurance company and by the health and safety executive is, show me the risk assessment for that. If you don't have one, you're in trouble straight away. If you do have one, perhaps it's flawed, perhaps it could have been done in more detail, or it could have been done better, but at least you have one to show. You've got some evidence that you took the time to stop and think about things before you actually did them. So you can do your risk assessments backed by that principle of so far as is reasonably practical. You weigh up the risks, and you weigh up the trouble, the costs, the time, the effort, and so on that the control measures would actually take you. So that's a primary piece of legislation. Also, then, need to draw your attention to the management regs, or the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, to give them their full title. This is a more specific piece of legislation that talks about a narrow area, but the main thing to take out of it is risk assessments are identified in these set of regulations. These regs came out, I think, if I remember right, 1992, so they're not new. Risk assessments have been around for years, okay? So we should be working in an environment where people's knowledge and ability to use risk assessments should be pretty refined now. And if you're not, then you're behind the curve, okay? So again, maybe not so much even for the course and the end assessment, but just ask yourself the question in your own organization: how does risk assessments work? Is it fairly seamless? Is there a good understanding of it? And if it's not, it's something you need to go back and revisit, because It is in black and white. It is an absolute legal requirement that any activity that poses a risk should be addressed in a document called a risk assessment. Those regulations also delve into things like competency and training. So that's something else I want to mention, and this has been sometimes a question. People need to be competent to do their job. So it doesn't matter what it is. Even if you say to somebody, hey, I want you to do risk assessments, we'll train them and show them how to do risk assessments. There are certain things we know, like operating machinery and things like that, where you have to have a particular qualification or certification to do it. But there's other things like, think of some of the stuff that people use on site, concrete saws and drills and things like that. Would you let a 17-year-old apprentice just pick one up and use it? Or would you say, listen, somebody needs to talk you through that and maybe supervise you using it until you've got the hang of it? So competency isn't always about a piece of paper. It's about not asking somebody to do a job that they're not competent to do. And that equally goes for any of you that do not carry out something that is beyond your capabilities, that's beyond your ability. Now, I said that you need to know where to find these regulations and the uses they can have. So, for example, look, they're not particularly interesting documents, okay, when you look at legislation, but typically legislation will have an index. So there's the index effectively for the management regulations, and you'll see there's a lot of things in it, but you can very quickly run your eye down that and you'll come to number 3, risk assessment. Right. So I can actually go very easily and find, what does the law actually say about risk assessment? We all know on site, maybe you've got a subcontractor coming to do some work or a contractor coming to do some work. You say, we need a risk assessment before that. Well, we all know that. But what if it's not forthcoming? What if I need to beef up my request for that a little bit more? Right. I'll go into the regulations, which are available on the internet free of charge. There's 3 risk assessment. So I'll go to section 3, and there's what it says about risk assessment. And even if we just read the top 2 lines, every employer shall make a suitable and sufficient assessment of the risks to health and safety of employees and the risks to health and safety of persons not in their employment. Okay? So it's in black and white. You can't dodge that. You must, any activity that you do, you must assess what harm that could be putting your own employees at, and also other people like members of the public or an occupied building that you're working in. So if somebody's not providing that, you can quote that. And unfortunately, that is the line that HSE will quote at you if you haven't got proper risk assessments. So it's quite easy to look these sort of things up if you need them. Now, other regulations, look, need to draw your attention to the work at height regulations, because the facts and figures that I showed you earlier on today, that is consistently the biggest killer. Now, it's not a very interesting document to read through, but again, it's available free of charge through the internet. It's maybe a 30-page document, but almost all legislation comes with guidance notes, okay? And that's probably your starting point, to be honest. If you have a work at height issue and you're not sure, you get things, maybe you've got a project you're working on and there's a bit of debate, does this need scaffold, or could it be done off an aluminium tower, or could it be done off a ladder, and you're sort of thinking, well, I wonder what the law says. You're probably better going to the HSE guides. So for example, again, on their website, free of charge, you can download a very useful publication, Working at Height, a brief guide. Okay, so that's probably your starting point, more so than delving into the legislation. You would have seen in my intro that one of the sessions will be about accidents and how we deal with accidents and the follow-up and the investigation. That's been another occasional question on the course over the years. With regards to accidents, you'd probably be familiar with the RIDOR regulations that sets out the types of accidents, incidents, and near misses that we have to notify the health and safety executive about. So there is a whole piece of legislation about that. But again, I wouldn't suggest you delve and try and read all the way through that. The simpler thing is simply to go to the HSE website, where for all sorts of topics that we're talking about, there are some very well laid out and useful pages on guidance. So you can see even on the table on the left-hand side, an example of reportable accident, who should report it, what records do I need to keep, how do I report it, and so on. And actually an assignment question a couple of years ago was asking you to go through the process of reporting a fictional accident. So some of the questions can be very practical things like that. So, you know, you can get stuff off the web page, and again, you can download guidance notes. So again, you can see there's a document that you can search on the HSE website, a brief guide to the RIDDOR regulations. So there's definitely no textbooks required for the health and safety module, because everything you need will either be given to you by me on the Moodle website, or you can access it through the HSE website. I'll be doing a session on the CDM regulations, and you know, obviously that from a pure construction perspective, the CDM regs are probably one of the most important pieces of legislation. They've been around in different incarnations for a good few years now, again since the mid 1990s, but the roles and responsibilities have changed gradually over the years, but it's useful to know your way around them. I'll have a whole session on this, but just to give you as a sort of pointer to that, there is a line straight out of the CDM regulations under client's duties. A client must make suitable arrangements for managing a project, including the allocation of sufficient time and other resources. Now, that's one I've used a lot. Everybody wants things done in a hurry, and that's okay. We all have commercial deadlines to meet. But sometimes if I feel safety has been compromised because things have been rushed, design has been rushed, procurement has been rushed, get on site, got a tight deadline, accidents sometimes are caused by people in a hurry, by people being rushed. And sometimes I just pull that clause out of the CDM regulations and send it to whoever I need to send it to and say, are you happy that you're complying with this particular piece of legislation? Okay. So we'll go into more depth on that on the CDM regulations. There's lots of guidance I'll be giving you, from basic posters that you can pull out to the whole HSE webs page on CDM. So if you're any role in construction, there's stuff there for you, whether you're a client, a designer, a main contractor, a subcontractor. There are documents there that explain your role, and that is certainly a piece of legislation that anybody working in construction should be aware of. Okay, so asbestos will be another session as well. Again, as everything this morning, there is a piece of legislation, but there is also a very good section on the HSE website about asbestos, including short videos and training materials, and again, information depending whether you're a building owner or a landlord or a designer or a contractor or somebody actually coming to do the work, because obviously your focus is going to be different depending on what your role is. And as I say, we'll have a standalone session on that. There's loads of examples of prosecutions. I'm not going to go through all of these one by one, but you know, because I'm not trying to scare people or bring all doom and gloom. But the bottom line is, whilst they're fairly rare, there have been people, with fines and things like that. But there have been people who have gone to prison for health and safety offences. Generally, people in a very senior role. And you really have to have done something wrong to end up in prison, not just missed something, but actively, for example, if you knew that something was unsafe and for whatever reason you decided just to go ahead and do it anyway, that's the sort of example where individuals can end up being prosecuted. There's also obviously corporate manslaughter in Scotland, corporate homicide, where companies can be charged with manslaughter, and we've had some pretty significant fines in those sort of cases. That's been around for 10 years or so now, but there we have £385,000 fines. We have quite consistently 6-figure fines whenever companies are charged with corporate manslaughter, and it was essentially intended to stop companies hiding behind the corporate thing and saying, we're a big company, if we get a big fine, so what, we can kind of afford it. Whereas corporate manslaughter certainly has changed the game a little bit there. So we've had those in GB, we've had those in Northern Ireland, where there have been prosecutions following fatalities, and the companies have got pretty large fines, including one in England where the fine was actually enough to put the company out of business. Now that's quite an extreme one, but it was a young geologist who died in a trench, which was unsafe for him to have been in, and there was a 6-figure fine which ultimately put the employer into liquidation. You'll also find details on the HSE website about enforcement, okay? So in terms of just how active HSE are, and I know obviously COVID changes things a little bit, but they're still out there, they're still doing visits and so on. And they, they tend to have different priorities at different time. They do focused inspections on different things. So, for example, fairly recently, one of their focuses would have been silica dust. So they got out around sites and very much raised the awareness about that, and specifically zoned in on sites where they saw that type of work was taking place. This is all useful, just context and background, but also it's there for, if you need to quote stuff. So let's say you're dealing with a client who's kind of saying, do we really need to do an asbestos survey? Do we really need to do that? Just point them in the direction of where clients have been prosecuted because they haven't done that. That's where sometimes it can be useful for you. Shouldn't forget, of course, that it's not just the fear of being prosecuted, but also there is a claims culture within the industry, and so it's certainly not all bogus. People get injured. People are entitled to go for compensation, and again that can be a substantial cost to organisations. But of course, we also have to recognise that we have a moral responsibility for people. We shouldn't just be doing things because the law asks us to do them. If by some feat in the new year the UK government said we're scrapping loads of health and safety legislation, I'd like to think that lots of companies would go, you know what, we're going to keep on doing things the way we did because it's the right thing to do to keep our workers safe. Also recently, I think there's a much greater recognition that health and safety is a good investment. So we put money into health and safety. It costs us money to do things, but there's a recognition that it also costs us a lot of money if we don't do things right. An accident can cost us a lot of money. And one of the figures that you would have seen that I brought up at the start of the presentation, just the annual cost to the UK economy of poor health and safety management. So there's still efficiencies that we could have there. There's still the case for greater investment in health and safety, and recognise the returns that will bring. Costs from accidents, you get direct costs and indirect costs. I won't be asking you to do it as part of this course, but sometimes I ask people actually take an accident that has happened in your organisation and calculate the costs, and you might be surprised just how even something relatively minor can end up costing your company a lot of money. The problem with an accident is you don't get an invoice at the end of it telling you how much it cost, but all the facts and figures, you think of the downtime, potentially the legal costs, the claims and so on, and insurance will only cover a fraction of that. So that's a commonly quoted diagram there about, the for every £1 that you might be able to reclaim in an accident from your insurance, there'll be a further £11 of uninsured costs, and that's the bit that people sometimes don't sort of see. And using figures like I have up on the screen at the moment, that can be useful things for using in your assignments. So the health and safety module, that's just a little bit of an introduction to it to get us started to think about the different areas. We'll be looking next time at risk. We'll be looking at accident investigations, traffic management, asbestos, and the CDM regs. The final thing, just before I throw open to questions more, I just want to mention is the project, okay? So you may not have had a chance to look at this. I am just going to stop the screen share for a second and play you a very short video clip to show you what this year's project looks like. Hopefully this will work for you. So can you all see the picture on the screen there? Yep. So you see it moving now? Yep. So you can see this is this year's project. You can see it's an old building that has been fire damaged, and you'll see inside in a moment, but it has to be obviously reinstated and converted into a wedding venue. So think about this as if it's a real project. Think about this as if you're being involved in the management of this project, and start thinking, what would the health and safety risks be? What would be the issues, the main issues, the reasonably foreseeable issues that you need to address as part of this project? Okay, now when you gain access to Moodle, you'll see the drawings for this. You'll be able to access this video, and and I would say watch it several times until you get to know it like a real live project, because all of your assignment questions will be based on this as if it's a real live project. So you're seeing things even from a construction perspective. It looks like a building of historic interest. There's lots of nice features there that have to be retained, but it's also going to be a wedding venue. So we're thinking about disabled access and stuff like that. We'll have to put a lift into the building. We're thinking about fire regulations. We're thinking about things like safety glass and some of the full height windows. We're thinking about that fire damage. How are we going to reinstate that part of the building safely? What are we going to find there? Could there be asbestos in this building because of the age of it? Is there anything else that we need to concern ourselves? Is the building, are there parts of it that aren't structurally safe? So you've got to kind of get to know this as if it is a real life project. And any of the questions that you get asked will relate to this. So for example, in the next session, when I talk about risk, if I ask you to do an exercise, be it produce a risk register or produce a risk assessment, it will be directly relating to this project. And you'll see, again, this is an area that will raise question marks for you: the fire damaged kitchen. How do we reinstate that? What are we going to find there? And Paul, when he comes along to talk about technology, potentially then there will be construction issues. How are we going to rebuild that? What form of construction will we go for? Bearing in mind there's going to be a new use for the building. So that's basically it. It takes you outside again there. So listen, I'm conscious it's 5 to 11. That's our sort of session for this morning. Just a quick one. As soon as you get your email from CIOB giving you Moodle access, you can apply for student membership. You can fill in a form on the website, but honestly, it's quite it's not the most user-friendly interface. If in doubt, lift the phone to the CIOB switchboard, ask for the membership team, and tell them that you are on a CMP course and you would like to join as a student, and they should be able to talk you through online. Has anybody got any particular questions, folks, that they want to put after this morning's session? All good? Okay. Folks, right, well, listen, that's our first proper session over, and we'll be back next Wednesday again at 10 o'clock for a session on risk. If you haven't got your Moodle form into me, just a reminder, send it in. And if you haven't got access to Moodle in the next 24 hours or so, drop me an email and let me know. If any of you are struggling with getting signed up for your student membership, let me know as well. Just drop me an email. Apart from that, thanks very much, folks, and I shall see you next Wednesday at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.